What if I told you that the fall of Rome didn't end the darkness? It unleashed horrors that would terrorize Europe for over 1,000 years. Welcome to Dark Ages Uncovered, where we dig into the truly terrifying truth about medieval Europe. From plague-ridden cities to torture chambers and castles, from Viking raids to the Black Death's devastating march across the continent. This isn't your typical history lesson. It's the dark side of the Middle Ages that textbooks don't want you to know. Segment 1. The Fall of Rome and Barbarian Horrors. When Rome fell in 476 CE, Europe didn't just enter a dark age, it plunged into a nightmare that would last centuries. The Germanic tribes that swept across the empire didn't just conquer cities, they brought their own brutal customs. Picture this. Entire Roman cities burned to the ground, their populations either slaughtered or enslaved. The Visigoths sacked Rome itself in 410 CE, turning the Eternal City into a smoking wasteland. But that was just the beginning. As these barbarian kingdoms carved up Europe, they established what we now call feudalism. But make no mistake, this wasn't a fair system. It was a brutal hierarchy where 90% of the population became virtual slaves to their lords. Peasants lived in constant fear of raids from Vikings, Magyars, and Saracens. Children never knew if they'd wake up to their village burning or their family dragged into captivity. Segment 2, Charlemagne's Bloody Empire. Enter Charlemagne, crowned emperor in 800 CE. But here's what they don't tell you. His Carolingian Renaissance came at an enormous cost. This great king built his empire through relentless warfare, forcing Christianity on pagan populations through fire and sword. His campaigns against the Saxons were genocidal. Thousands were slaughtered for refusing to convert. He established the first European empire since Rome, but it was built on bones and terror. The very monasteries that preserved learning also became centers of brutal inquisition, torturing heretics and burning so-called witches. Meanwhile, Vikings were terrorizing Europe from Russia to Ireland. These weren't just raiders, they were systematic terrorists. They didn't just steal, they enslaved entire populations, selling them to markets in Baghdad and Constantinople. Picture the terror. Communities destroyed in hours, people dragged away to lives of bondage in foreign lands. Segment 3, the Plague Years. But the true horror of the Middle Ages came in waves of disease that wiped out entire populations. The Black Death of 1347 to 1350 killed 25-50 million Europeans. That's up to 60% of the population in some areas. This wasn't just death, it was psychological torture on a continental scale. Entire villages became ghost towns. Parents abandoned their children. Priests fled from their parishes. Society collapsed as people lost faith in God, in kings, in everything. The plague returned repeatedly, 1556, 1665, 1720, each wave bringing fresh terror. But even between plague years, life was brutal. Surgery was performed without anesthesia. A simple infection could mean amputation or death. Childbirth killed 1 in 10 women. The average person lived to age 30. Segment 4, Castles of Terror. The castles that dot the European landscape weren't just defensive structures, they were instruments of terror. Built to dominate local populations, these stone fortresses housed torture chambers where justice meant pain. Medieval torture wasn't rare, it was routine. The rack, iron maidens burning at the stake, all were standard practice. Lords had the right of life and death over their serfs. A peasant could be executed for stealing a loaf of bread, while nobles could murder with impunity. Castles also served as prisons where people disappeared forever. The infamous Tower of London held political prisoners in conditions so brutal that many went mad. The dungeons beneath European castles held thousands who simply vanished. Segment 5, the Crusades and religious fanaticism. The Crusades weren't just religious wars, they were continental-scale atrocities. When European armies marched to the Holy Land, they first slaughtered Jews in their own communities, then moved on to purify Muslim and Orthodox Christian populations in the Middle East. These holy wars introduced new levels of brutality. Siege warfare meant watching your children starve as armies surrounded your city. The Children's Crusade of 1212 led to thousands of children being sold into slavery in North Africa. The Inquisition made everyone a potential heretic. Neighbors denounced neighbors. Families were torn apart. The very institutions meant to save souls became machines of terror. So when we talk about the Dark Ages, we're not just talking about a lack of learning. We're talking about a millennium of genuine darkness. Plague, war, torture, and terror defined daily life for millions of Europeans. The Middle Ages weren't a romantic time of knights and castles. They were a period of survival against unimaginable horrors. Segment 7, the Church of Pain. The Church did not just tolerate violence, sometimes it blessed it. In monasteries across Europe, monks organized contests called penitential games. Barefoot pilgrims whipped themselves bloody to prove faith. Others crawled through gravel or carried crosses until their backs broke. To the Church, pain purified. To the people, it justified suffering as sport. By the 13th century, bishops held tournaments called Judicium Dei, trials by ordeal, where guilt or innocence was tested by fire, boiling water, or combat. The crowd watched not for justice, but for spectacle. Because when faith became entertainment, even salvation was just another game. Segment 8. Blood for the crown, for kings. Sport was power in disguise. In England, Henry VIII held hunting tournaments so elaborate they resembled war. Nobles competed for his favor, and sometimes their lives. Falconry, archery, and boar hunts weren't games. They were auditions for survival. A missed arrow could cost you your title. A perfect shot might earn you a seat beside the throne. In France, dueling became its own deadly performance, a sport of honor where noble pride demanded blood. By 1600, duels had killed so many aristocrats that even the church called it a plague. But to men of power, the sword was the scoreboard, and every scar was a medal. Segment 9. The Peasant Games. While nobles died for honor, peasants played for escape. In Scotland and Ireland, entire villages joined in shinty, a brutal ancestor of hockey. In England, camp ball and shin-kicking turned feast days into brawls. There were no rules, only grudges. Broken noses were common, so were deaths. When lords banned such games, they returned under new names, disguised as festivals, saints' days, or even funerals, because for the common man, one day of chaos was worth a year of obedience, and the field became his battlefield. Segment 10. Beasts of the Arena. Man was not the only player. In the late Middle Ages, bear baiting and bull running became the crowd's obsession. Animals were chained, blinded, and set upon by dogs for entertainment. In London's Southwark district, these blood sports stood beside churches and taverns. The holy, the sinful, and the savage sharing one street. Even queens attended. Elizabeth Thirst herself reportedly kept a bear pit near the Thames, where nobles bet fortunes on which beast would die slower. It wasn't about courage, it was about control. The pleasure of watching something helpless struggle, and perhaps that's why it never truly went away. Segment 11. The Lost Games of Death. Not every medieval game survived. Some were too dark to be remembered. In 14th century Bohemia, villagers practiced a ritual called the Blind King. A man blindfolded and armed with a club was spun around in a ring of participants. Whoever he struck replaced him. It was supposed to mimic the unpredictability of fate, but many never walked away. In France, the Burning Circle forced condemned men to run barefoot across coals while gamblers bet on how many steps they'd last. These weren't games, they were rehearsals for execution, celebrated as mirth by those who'd never feel the heat. Segment 12. The Silence of the Stadium. Now, when you walk into a stadium, feel the roar, the pulse, the rhythm. You're hearing echoes of something ancient. The Colosseum, the tilt yard, the bear pit, the mud fields of medieval England. Every cheer is a memory of blood. Every whistle, a ghost of pain. We call it sport. They called it survival. And history never truly changes. The Dark Ages never ended. They just found better lighting. What aspects of this dark medieval world shock you the most? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying truths from history that the history books won't tell you. Subscribe for more historical nightmares from the past.